Hello and welcome to episode 162 of First Geek 411. I'm your host, Cameron Franklin, and we were not just having a very off-topic conversation as Chris was like, we're going right now. And it's been a great day so far, even though it is the worst Monday of the year.
So true.
And so joining me as we try to make the day better is my best man, Chris Nicolay. Chris, how you doing today?
I am bleh. I'm tired. I hate I hate this Monday so much. I've made my no, I haven't. I don't know if I've ever mentioned this. Daylight savings time is the worst thing in the world.
I feel like there's no way that we have never talked about daylight savings time on this podcast.
Probably not. But yeah, it's the worst recurring Monday. Or I guess technically daylight savings time is Sunday, but it's the worst recurring Monday thing that happens in a year. Like I'm sure worse things have happened on a Monday, but this is a yearly thing. My sleep's and as I get older it gets worse.
You're so old, Chris.
I know. Score and a
Joining
half.
us from the Great White North, Shanine, how are you doing today?
Also super tired. Yeah.
And then I'm super jealous because she gets to meet all the cool people. Emma, how are you doing today?
I completely forgot what I was about to say.
Perfect.
So yeah, I'd like to think that my brain is running at half power right now. But I'm still not complaining, even though it's daylight savings. Also, we have a new layout. I just noticed for Twitch. The new design.
It is
I
up.
was gonna say it
I
looks
just
really
noticed. Good
Great
job, Chris.
I'm still filling stuff in. Like I wanted more space in the middle so that when we can put stuff there, but I haven't decided what's gonna go there yet. So it's just our names.
I like it.
This week, we got some Stargate SG-1 news. We're going to talk about rewatching stuff. A film has retaken the top spot. And then we got board game expansion conversations. And then we're going to wrap up with our top 3 illustrations of goodness. Before we get into that, as always, you can find us on our social media at OneGeek411 on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can also join our Discord server if you want to chat with us between shows. And you can also shoot us an email at 1stgeek411@gmail.com. Then you can check out our show notes on our website, onegeek411.com. You can watch live on Twitch each Monday night at 6:45 Mountain Time, be part of the post-show chat. Then you can find the videos over on YouTube where you can like, subscribe, ring the bell, all of those things. And then you can rate and subscribe wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. And you can also check out our merch on our Redbubble store. More stuff on the way. Before we get into the news for the week, Emma, what have you been up to?
Getting snowed in. With 2 feet of snow, unlike Texas.
Yeah.
We've got 2 feet of snow. So that was fun. I had to clear my car off twice in the length of like 5 hours. And there was the same amount of like 8 inches both times. Actually, it's more like a foot each time on my car. So I cleared it off. And then 7 hours later, there was another foot of snow on it. But yeah, that was fun. And we had our D&D session 1 on Saturday, and that was super fun as well. And I pet my dogs this week. It's mostly been school this week, so nothing super exciting happened, but I got to pet my dogs, so that made me happy.
I have to say, like, something that I will never miss is having to shovel snow while it's snowing. Because it's just like it's so defeating.
However counterintuitive it sounds, you have to shovel while it's snowing if you want to get anywhere.
I just never shovel.
Or that.
Because then I have an excuse if I can't make it to work. Life hacks, yo. Life hacks.
I like where your head's at.
Well, and part of it is also like when a plow comes in sometimes, it makes a berm right at the end of your driveway, like
Yeah.
a big one, and you can't get over that. So that's usually where it's. So it's like I shoveled the driveway, and now I'm still stuck. So it was pointless. So life hacks, people, life hacks.
Shanine, what have you been up to?
I also enjoyed our Faithful Hedrons on Saturday. Poppy got to talk to a librarian and the queen, so she's just having a great time.
It was a big week for Poppy.
Mm-hmm.
It was.
She's being
We've also
honorified.
yes. Is that not right?
I love it.
Poppy's very sure it's right. We've been rewatching Chuck, which has been a lot of fun. I remembered it being more serious, and now I'm watching it and I'm like, this is so goofy. I love it.
I love Chuck.
So good.
Chuck is
So
on my
good.
list to go back and rewatch.
Still
It's
never seen
definitely
it.
worth it.
Still never seen it.
I mean, Emma, you have so much free
Highly
time. right
recommend.
So much free time.
I still
Yeah.
think Sandwich Girl is the best girl.
Oh, Lou.
Oh, Lou. Yep.
I mean, I love Sarah the most, obviously, but Lou was pretty
In the
good.
grand scheme of things, Sarah makes the most sense, you know. But
Because she's the best. But it's fun watching
I mean,
it
she's
a
just the
second
best,
time.
most fleshed out because she's obviously the main character. So
Well, yes.
just
But
saying.
yeah. Catching a lot of things going through again. It's fun.
Although I also would have been okay if Kristen Crick got a bigger role in that show too, when during her season when she showed up. I think she would have been a great character in that show too.
Yeah, that's the other thing. There's like so many cameos and stuff, or like smaller roles that I forgot about. I'm like, oh, yeah, Buster from Arrested Development is in here. Oh yeah, Mary is in here. Like, what's
Like,
going
oh.
on?
It's got a good cast.
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh, like the way they do the twists and stuff. It's like, yes, it's ridiculous, but that's kind of the point. I love it.
Yes.
Isn't John Cena in it? Or am I thinking of something else? Oh, I might be thinking of Psych.
Psych also is known for its cameos. Psych is the one I'm obsessed with still.
It looks
Psych
like
is
I'm
also like
thinking-
has ongoing
I am
things
thinking Psych.
periodically.
Yeah.
They're just like, oh, by the way, here's a random
Here's
continuation
a random
Christmas
movie.
special, which makes sense.
Take
It's like,
it.
make that money.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we also got new bookshelves this weekend, so I've been setting up my library. It's very beautiful, and I'm very happy about it.
I
So-
have a
Stop
IKEA gift
copying
card
me, Shanine.
sitting aside specifically for getting a bookshelf that I could have gotten by now, but I haven't because I will be moving to LA soon.
Woo.
So I can always just, well, soon being, I don't know when, within the next like 6 months. So I've been waiting until I get there to get the bookshelf. So I don't have
makes
to
sense.
haul it several hundred miles away.
Yeah.
But I'm excited for that day.
And
So
Shanine,
I
I
can
saw
relate.
your tweet about how do people organize their books.
By
Yeah,
color.
there's a lot of opinions.
Yeah.
By color.
By color.
Don't do color.
Color
Don't.
is an option.
That-
Not
that
for
is in-
me.
It-
but
that is
it
indeed
is
an
an option.
It is an option.
It's-
People do
it's-
do
yeah.
it, but it's people that don't read those books.
Yeah.
The books are
Right?
just an
I'm like,
aesthetic.
how could I ever find it? Like, I have series that all the spines are different
Yeah.
colors, and
Right.
that would
Yeah.
drive me.
Yeah, can you imagine?
And you could
separating
never
this?
find the
Can't.
next
my-
one. I don't know what color it is. I just know I have it.
Exactly.
Worse yet, people like pull their sleeves off their books and then
Oof.
sort by color.
That's too much work.
I feel like that would be the difficulty though. Like if you sort, but like with sleeve on, like what happens if you then like lose the sleeve for the book? Then now you have to redo your whole color organization.
Right.
And why sort by color
You'll
to
never know
begin
where
with?
anything is. It's because it's just an aesthetic. It's not.
Yeah.
You don't read them. You bought those books because they'll look good on the shelf behind you.
They're not real book people.
They're not real book people.
They're just decorators.
I mean, they might be real book people, but they're probably like
There's-
Kindle readers.
Or
There's
not, yeah,
some-
not those book people. Like,
I don't know. There's some big book accounts I follow that organize by color, but I feel like maybe they read them and then sort them and then like never have to find them again.
I guess that works. That makes sense. But no.
in my office, like when I was a minister, I sorted by like theme and then by height. 'Cause, like it bothered me to have like a really short book and then like a giant one next to it when I sorted by author, especially like if an author was inconsistent.
Mm-hmm.
Or
And
I think you
so-
just got different editions
Maybe.
sometimes. Or sometimes they use different publishers and that changes everything too. Like from book to book.
Yeah, I mean, it would also be like sometimes they would be hardcover versus softcover, things like that. But like that was kind of one of those things. But I just kind of grouped them and then went.
I just started just like specifically buying books out of specific sets so they all match. Because there was a period where like my Aragon books were all like a mix match of hardcover and paperbacks. Don't do that to yourself, people. I guess for
Too
my
bad, I do
bookshelves,
it
like in
anyway.
terms of just like bookshelves, I probably wouldn't put paperbacks on the shelves that I'm trying to show off. I don't know.
See, that's just getting too picky for me. It's a book.
But yeah, I think my shelves look really pretty. I got all my books organized and everything decorated. I'll post a picture later.
I was about to ask. I was like, I don't think I'd seen a picture yet. But
I'm gonna do a big before and after.
Nice.
yeah, you have all the social media plans.
Oh yeah.
Scheduled postings. Stay tuned for part 2.
Chris, what have you been up to?
I read my technical manual for my XT4. I guess that's more, nerdy than geeky, but it's a big manual. This camera's got a lot going on with it, and I still don't know how to run like everything about it. I'm like, where's this in the menus? How do I do this? So I did that for the most part for the weekend. I also finalized my plans and ordered a ton of wood for my bookshelves. Because Shanine and I are
Stop
always
copying
on the
me,
same page.
Chris.
Yeah, what I hear is that that Shanine already has her bookshelves, and Chris, you're now trying to get some.
Well, I'm
So-
making mine.
Mm.
So like, I designed them, and I had to order wood. So, but it's gonna be real cool. It's a modular design. I'm very happy with it. I'm excited. Hopefully, it'll be up after this weekend, and y'all be able to see it instead of the screen. It'll be fantastic. I hope. We'll see if I finish it. It's a big undertaking, but we'll see. And I booted up the 3D printer.
Woo.
Yeah,
What'd you print?
D&D figures.
Ooh, nice.
I can't show them to you though,
Because they're a surprise.
because I will be using them. And it's gonna give something away if I do. I don't need you guys preparing over the next month.
Yeah, because the thing that we seem to be best at as a podcast is preparing. So-
Definitely.
It's true.
That's-
We are so prepared. We only have things 5 minutes before we go live.
And it's also like I'm gonna have these figures, and I'm not even sure if I'm gonna have everything printed in time, so we might end up just on roll 20. Everything's up in the air. We'll see. But yeah, plans. Oh, and I went hiking. First hike of the year. I went downtown, did some street photography, did a little hike. It's been good. The weather's been nice. It's in the 50s here. shorts weather. I was gonna wear shorts, but then it was too cold in the morning. Yeah, that's about it. Just playing and spending money.
Nice. And reading about the money you spent.
Yes, because I want to make the most use out of it. And then it just
Then
makes me
let
want to
me
spend
play
more
with
money.
it. Let me play with it.
Well, when you come visit, you can.
Great, I will.
Yeah, but I am all in on Fuji now. I'm abandoning Nikon, and I'm just all in. Like, I already have the next camera picked out. Like, as an auxiliary camera. Eventually, maybe. It'll probably change because it'll get updates, but just saying. Okay, that's it.
For us, we had a very Marvel-filled weekend. And so, aside from the aforementioned Dungeons and Dragons, we watched, or I've started watching Marvel 616, which is a documentary series on Disney Plus, kind of about how the Marvel universe has influenced different parts of culture and kind of how people have been inspired by those characters, inspired by the art to become Marvel creators and things like that. So they had an episode where one of the threads was about the woman who created Kamala Khan's Miss Marvel and how she got to be involved, and then like the reboot of Captain Marvel from another person's perspective. There's one about the person who's the main artist for Miles Morales, and then the one that we were watching right before podcast was about cosplay and how Marvel has influenced that realm as well. And then we also watched Marvel Studios Assembled, which is their like behind the scenes show. So I guess there will be one of these after every like Disney Plus series. And so the first one was the one episode on WandaVision. And they talked about like the behind the scenes, doing the first episode in front of like a live studio audience and stuff like that. And it was really cool. They talked some about like the music behind it and things like that as well. Then they had like really cool shots of Wanda and Agnes on the cables, like flying around. And I was like, those are always fun shots.
I love that practical stuff.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that they said is like, it definitely made sense, but it wasn't one of those things I would have thought of. But like, this is one of the few times they've actually had two people flying in a Marvel property. Because it's almost always been like that one of the characters is CG. So this is like one of the first times that they've actually had to rig multiple people to fly. I was like, huh.
I can see that.
Yeah, and like I was like, there's no way that's true. Then I was thinking back, and I'm like, oh well, Iron Man's always CGI. Like, well, like there you go. And then we also watched Raya and the Last Dragon.
Represent.
I was very what?
I said represent.
Yeah. I was really worried that the dragon was going to be knockoff Mushu. And that was not the case. And so
We took Mushu out of the live action to give you a new animated version of him in a different story.
But I really liked it. I'm trying to think, like, you would think I would have organized my thoughts knowing that this is what I was going to talk about. But I think it does a lot of things very well. And one of my like general thoughts watching it, kind of going back to Chris to what you just said, is that like I kind of wish like they would have gone more in this direction for the live action Mulan, where it's just like its own story rather than like the live action Mulan trying to like straddle the line between remake and new thing.
I mean, I'll agree, but the point of doing the live actions is to play off that nostalgia. So you don't have to do any additional marketing.
Right. But if you're going to do that, just do the original. But in live action.
Right. But I mean, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Like,
And that's why I've made that point.
it's
Before.
like you have to
Like,
title it something else if you're.
that's why like that's one of my big criticisms of Mulan is that it tried to not just be the original, but then it also wasn't its own thing well.
Yeah.
So whereas Raya very much, I mean, obviously completely different story, but some like similar motifs and stuff like that. But really enjoyed it. I think it's only on Premiere Access right now for Disney Plus.
Yeah.
But
Correct.
I just checked. It still is.
okay.
It's still not available in Southeast Asia.
And then other than that, streamed some Fall Guys yesterday. Got a crown, so that was great. And then been playing No Man's Sky. And so still going through that and getting set up for when I inevitably stop playing for another 6 or 8 months, and then have things ready to go for when I come back.
And try to return.
Yep. That's basically what I do every time I play. It's like, this is the thing I want to get to the next time I start playing No Man's Sky. And so with that, let's jump into our discussion topics for this week. Emma, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, I've got some news in terms of, I think, being one of the only people here who watched Stargate SG-1 as a fan. But
I've
this
watched
last week,
Stargate.
well, watch versus being a fan. But
Right.
this last week, we lost Cliff Simon, who played Ball in the series, and Ball was a fan favorite character. And he's like one of the fan favorite villains more towards the end of the series, who clones himself and sends his clones all over the galaxy to like wreak havoc. But he passed away this last week in a kiteboarding accident at the age of 52, 53, or 58. So it was definitely a loss in the Stargate community as an actor and character who was well loved by the fans. And yeah, that's my bit of news for the week.
So, also, I'm just going to throw out, it's not that I'm not a fan of Stargate, because it's just
Right.
that SG-1's not my favorite.
That is fair.
Love Atlantis, love Universe. Those I got really into.
Universe is the only spinoff I have not seen.
Not bad. Like, but then again, the spin-offs are also, like, in general, they're just completely different than SG-1 was.
Mm-hmm.
Different big bads.
Different big bads.
But yeah, it is sad.
I watched a good chunk of SG-1 because my dad really enjoyed it. And so, like, Cliff Simmons or Simon in that role definitely looks familiar, but I don't know. I can't like place a lot of it, but
yep, he has a history of being on NCIS, Castle, and 24, as well as a couple of other things. But he's also an Olympic athlete and is from South Africa. He has lots of success to his name. So, yeah.
I don't have a great segue from that.
Okay.
We'll definitely keep his family in our prayers.
Yeah.
Shanine, what do you got for us this week?
Okay, well, speaking of Chuck, I have been in this past year rewatching stuff and just like wanting to rewatch things more than watch new things. For example, The Office multiple times, Jane Austen movies, Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter, and yeah, stuff like that. So what have you rewatched the most, and what are your comfort rewatches?
Like series or just anything?
Anything that you're like, I need something either to be with me when I am sad or make me feel happy or whatever that you like, your go-to watch.
So if I need to cry, I rewatch Your Lie in April. In general, probably my most rewatched thing is V for Vendetta because I watch that every year
Mm-hmm.
for the last decade, more than a decade now. Dang. See, I'm old. And obviously, and then certain things like A Knight's Tale and Rush Hour. Just depends. But those are my most like rewatched, just throw on, enjoy things.
My answer is the same for both, and that would be Doctor Who. It's just I put that on when I'm feeling sad or when I'm feeling happy, and I've watched it several times over. But I've also watched Finding Nemo several times over in my life, just for the heck of it. And the occasional Bollywood movie. There's a couple of Bollywood movies I've rewatched on repeat because I just like them a lot. So, yeah.
For me, in terms of series, I mean, about every 2 years, I'll rewatch The Office, Parks and Rec, and How I Met Your Mother. Like not like back to back, but like over those 2 years, I will rewatch each of those shows once. And so like that's definitely one for me. Like those, or even if like I don't do like a whole rewatch, like I've done the ones where it's just like I'm gonna pick up in this one season of Parks and Rec, and I'm gonna watch this one season, and then we'll watch something else, that kind of thing. Um, and then in terms of movies, V for Vendetta, as Chris said, is probably one that like I've most intentionally rewatched. Um, I'm sure I've seen like Star Wars or Harry Potter more than I've seen V for Vendetta, but that's also um, kind of cheating because it's like it's hard so hard to like separate like watching specific movies versus like a series of like if I rewatch like just Empire Strikes Back, does that count at like like that kind of thing? Um, but and then I'm trying to think of other. I think besides comedies, I don't typically go back and rewatch shows. I think comedies are just very easy for me to put on in the background while I'm doing things. And then it's like, especially ones that like I'm familiar with. And so I can kind of just like hop in. Oh, I know this joke is coming up that I like. Here's the joke. It's funny. Let's go. Like, and then just get back to the other thing, that kind of thing. But, yeah. I think those are the big ones for me. In chat, we got some good call outs from Varath. It says The Hunt for Red October, Apollo 13, The Lord of the Rings, The Martian, Into the Spider-Verse. And I'll say Into the Spider-Verse is probably for me one of the like most recent releases that I've watched multiple times.
Same.
I can see that one catching up pretty quickly to other things because it's so good.
It's so good.
It's probably one of the most rewatchable modern release.
Yeah. Like I think I've already watched that 4 times since it came out.
There was a period there I watched it. I just kept putting it on. I've probably seen it 7 or 8. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know what else. I don't feel like going to any of my comfort ones. Spider-Man.
Then we also got some from Chunk, who said, I end up rewatching Gilmore Girls, Friends, and How I Met Your Mother a lot because I cycle between them to fall asleep. So I catch big chunks of them a lot.
Oh yeah, I'm rewatching Gilmore Girls right now too.
You didn't mention it in the what you've been up to. It doesn't count.
Because I'm not like actively rewatching it. I'm just like, oh, my husband is upstairs, so we're not watching TV together right now. I'll throw on an episode of Gilmore Girls.
People in chat or over on YouTube, let us know what your favorite ones are. We'll talk about them in the post show or respond to the comments, I guess, because we obviously won't be able to talk about the YouTube comments in the post show. So there's that. Chris, so you got a few for us this week.
Woohoo.
What you got?
Yeah, so I mean, not really surprising. Kind of start us off is that Netflix series or shows or movies have. So Netflix has received 35 Oscar nominations this last year. As if things didn't go to theaters, or things got delayed so far. So I mean, it's not a surprise that streaming services would be dominating the Oscars this year. Reason why this is noteworthy is that in past years, the Academy has talked about instituting certain additional requirements to kind of limit streaming service movies from making it or being eligible for Oscar nominations, such as requiring a theatrical release. And obviously they just had to walk that back this year because
I do think it would be very interesting if they would have tried to enforce that for 2020.
it's like
They would just have like 6 movies for the entire thing.
Can you imagine like
Tenet wins everything, and then there was also Onward. Winning like anything animated or comedy related. That's basically the Oscars for
could have like tried like can you imagine just being a film person who's like we had a theatrical release.
Yeah.
It's like this is a film student movie and it wins an Oscar because there's nothing else.
I wish. That'd be nice.
Perfect time. We didn't make any money, but we won an Oscar. So that was pretty cool. But in other streaming service news, there's been a couple other things happening. So right now Netflix is testing out in kind of a beta aspect is kind of password sharing prevention. I personally think this is in response to Disney Plus quickly gaining on them in terms of users. And this, so ultimately Netflix being a desirable thing, but so many accounts are shared, so that prevents their profits and their ability. But with other streaming services kind of gaining to kind of stay competitive, it makes sense. I don't like it because Netflix has always been pretty really flexible when it comes to account sharing. But we'll see how that turns. Granted, I've always been a paying customer since the DVD era.
Hey, would that you say outside of a household, would that, like, I'm on my mom's Netflix account, but I'm obviously not living with her. Would they want me to buy my own subscription when I'm a poor grad student?
Yes.
Lame.
Well, ultimately the way they are doing this is they are working with 2-factor authentication for logins. So
it's not that you can't do it. It's just that we're going to annoy you so much.
Yeah.
That you have to do it. Like that kind of thing.
Like that. It's just almost more convenient. I mean, you can always do the whole create a new email every free trial period every 7 days.
Nah, too much work.
There's easy ways to do it actually if you have a Google account, because you can create pseudo things off your email and it'll still just come to your email, so it makes it easy to manage. But there's probably YouTube that you can watch to kind of look a little more into that. You can like add little, like, I think you put an asterisk and then you can put like something there, so you can actually separate your login so you know what they're specifically for. Google has some cool features like that. But yeah, 2-factor authentication possibly coming. It's still in beta. They're playing around at it. We'll see what they end up actually doing. But yeah, in response to Disney Plus having passed 100 million users in 16 months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's crazy. Like, it's so many. Like, and it's so interesting to think about how about like I don't know, like 4 or 5 months ago, it was like, what was Disney Plus really doing after Mandalorian? That's probably longer than 4 or 5 months ago. 2020 is a blur, but like after like season one of Mandalorian, there was like that lull where there just wasn't a ton coming to the Disney Plus. Like it was still the best place to go because you could like for Disney and Marvel things, but like in terms of like major releases, there wasn't anything crazy. And then now it's 100 million people.
Right.
Like,
Well, they almost had to. And like this is like obviously that was my initial gripe when Disney Plus originally launched is it's really just their back catalog. But obviously with their new plans and everything, we're seeing them really ramp up production and capitalizing on their IPs and providing more content specifically for their streaming platform. And this is what we expected, but they are hitting it hard. And I think with those like with the Star Wars series announcements and kind of all the hype regarding the Mandalorian, they're just like greenlight everything and just make it because that's why they are growing. And this is obviously the fastest growing streaming platform out there. But it's not surprising. And Netflix really laid a lot of the groundwork for streaming for what it is. And I know it's just a different era than when Netflix first launched as a streaming platform. So, but still awesome. I will probably always be subscribed to both.
I got a question for us as a cast. So whenever we get to big numbers, I always like to compare to populations of countries. So if Disney Plus was a country, what number population wise do you think they would be? So like if one's the most populous country, where do you think Disney Plus would fall?
42. I don't know. It's actually probably a lot higher, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. I don't even know what the U.S. population is.
30.
The U.S. population, for reference, is
like 320 million?
300 million.
300 million, okay.
And
so I had
a little bit more than that, but like...
30.
27.
So if Disney Plus was a country, it would be the 15th largest country in the world. Just behind Egypt.
What number?
And just before Vietnam, 15.
Oh.
According to worldometers.info/world population. So I don't know how accurate that Google search was, but
like I just have no reference for like population sizes in Europe. For one, or like pretty much any other country for the most part.
I mean, I'm going to be honest. I don't really have a reference point for cities.
Right. Neither do I. Yeah.
Like if you asked me to like ballpark, like, I mean, even after you get out of like our little bubble in the US or like my little bubble in like Dallas, like I couldn't tell you like New York's population, but like I also definitely couldn't do like any place in Canada. Like I just have no idea.
I don't like thinking things up in just those sizes, like in those amounts. Just too much.
Too much counting.
That's why I like my small town, 35,000. Boom. You break 100,000, I'm like, yeah, it's just like that. That's a lot. You got a lot of people. Good for you. And then just even like the jump from having 100,000 people to 1 million, my brain's not equipped for that.
10 times more people.
10 times more people, but like
math.
That's a big jump. Like when they do visual representations of like, if this grain of rice was $100,000, this bag is $1 billion. It's like, it's crazy. In other kind of entertainment news, thanks to the theatrical re-release of Avatar, Avatar has officially resumed its top spot as the highest-grossing movie of all time.
I did not even know that there was a re-release of Avatar.
Not in the U.S. It's all thanks
Oh.
to China.
Mhm.
Right. It's like neither did I until I saw this news. I'm like we're still like I don't really know of a ton of theaters that are open to begin with, and then I'm like, you always got to remember that Chinese market now, because that Chinese market is truly what makes and breaks movies now. Or it's so funny, like complete flops in the US
Mm-hmm.
will be major hits. Like the Warcraft movie, huge in China, made all their money back. And the last little piece that I kind of thought was cool. So I was listening to NPR this week, specifically Planet Money, and they went on. So Planet Money did this special where they went through kind of old comics, and specifically ones that are in the public domain, and they found this old like Sonic hero called Microface.
That's indeed a name.
Yep. From the 1940s. And they have revived him. So they are officially putting in production, creating merchandise to kind of recreate this story. Is kind of a cool thing. And they even like they reached out to the like family of the original artist and talked to him, and they are super excited for the return of Microface. One thing in their story, so they even went to like the history of the character and why the original author and artist stopped, and is like at the time there was a lot of backlash against comics, saying it promotes teenage delinquency. And
To be fair, what doesn't promote teenage delinquency?
Everything, because they are everything we are interested in is a part of. What was the wording on that pamphlet?
People will have to join the Discord to see.
It's true, but it's right. It's right there.
And we can talk about it post show.
Satan's spiritual structure. Okay, we'll talk a little more about that. Yeah, post show. But I thought this was super cool, just like because ultimately, yeah, it's in existence. It had probably a short run back when, but yeah, that it went into the public domain, and now they're just kind of recreating it. I kind of want to look in to see what else is in that public domain and would be available, but really cool. I and just from a most random podcast style show, and I love it when they do these types of deep dives, especially in things I'm interested in. Microface.
So, what kind of hero is he?
I don't know a ton about the story itself.
Yes.
Does he have a small face?
Plot twist, it's an ironic name. And so that they're actually giant.
Let's see what we can find out. We'll save it. We'll dress it, and I'll do some research while we continue the show, and we'll talk about in post show.
You do that. I'd like to know more.
I ordered one of the first issues.
So this week for us, I got some board game news, and that is that Clank in Space is getting a series of mini expansions called Clank in Space Adventures. And the first mini expansion will be called Pulse Arcade. And the main thing that you need to know is that it comes with little arcade cabinets that have something to do with the game. That's basically what instantly sold me on this. And so let me see. This is a small expansion for the Clank in Space line. And then let me see, pits you against the fiendish Lord Erraticus, who was their main villain throughout the series. There'll be 6 new modules for you to plunder within the living ship, including the Alien Overlord's collection of intergalactic arcade cabinets. And so I'm super excited to see what this is about. Have any of y'all played Clank or Clank in Space?
I've never even heard of this game.
Oh my gosh, Emma, you will have to play.
Never even heard of it.
Nope.
I've heard that it's fun, and that's all I know.
I've heard of it. Never played it. Yeah.
I really like Clank in Space because I like sci-fi. Regular Clank is a bit more of like adventure, so it's more like Indiana Jones, that kind of thing. Whereas Clank in Space is a lot of sci-fi, so there's some Doctor Who references, Emma, things like that. A lot of these stuff is like the thinly veiled allegories, that kind of thing. And so it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy, even from a gameplay perspective, I enjoy Clank in Space a bit more than Clank, but I'm really excited to see it getting expansions. Like right after Clank in Space released, they released an expansion for regular Clank that wasn't compatible with it. And I was just like, please don't throw Clank in Space out, like, and just have it be a one-off. I want to see it get expansions. But yeah, so that's why I'm like super hyped to see this, that we're actually getting something, we're actually getting some continuations. And so, and then seeing this got me thinking, for those of you that are board game people, how do you feel about expansions? Do you tend to like play a lot of expansions, or do you tend to like avoid expansions for games?
I kind of love and hate them because I love that you get to play more and it expands on a game that I already love, but then I have to buy them.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think it just depends on like if my play group is interested in the game. Because while I might love it, like the replayability within the play group determines whether or not, oh, this is a new take and new addition, so it revitalizes it essentially. But if I have no one to play with,
Yeah, I think that's the big challenge for me when it comes to board games is the more complicated a game is and the less well known it is. Like I don't know people in my area that would know how to play those games. So the amount of time it would take during like just a get together a party to just sit down and teach them the game alone is like an hour. And then it takes another 3 hours to play the game because you still have to stop and re-explain the rules. And by that time, it's just not fun. So like I have played like Catan with expansions, and that's fun. But I've never really been able to play other games with expansions because I've never played any other more complex games enough times to even add on the expansions. So
and that kind of hits on a point similar to what Varoth says in chat of like, I think a great example is something like the Carcassonne big box where you can play with different rules and sets every time. Like I think a lot of the really good expansion, I think a lot of the really good expansions, because Carcassonne was one that came to mind for me. A lot of the really good expansions are ones that you can just kind of say, this is the game. And you can just kind of explain it all as the game. So like where people don't actually know that they're playing an expansion. And I think that's one thing that Catan does really well also, is that it's just, this is the game. There's these things. Whereas I think a lot of other, there are some expansions that change the game so much or add so many rules that it can take a game that is complicated and then make it even more complicated. And then it's very hard to teach because there's now so much going on.
Yeah, it makes it a whole new game instead of like in a build off the original game, like just a new aspect. Or
and I'll say like I think one of my favorite games is Vindication by Orange Nebula Games, and they kind of do the approach of like there have been like bigger expansions, but the basic idea of the game is that there's the base rule set, then there's a bunch of different mini expansions in the box. So like you can add pets into the game. You can add more like backstabby cards into the game. You can add these different tiles that let you do different things. And I think that that's a good way to do it. But then like you get into the bigger ones for Vindication and it's like, okay, well, here's this extra 5 actions that you can do on your turn when your turn is already really long and there's already a ton going on. And it can definitely make that overwhelming, especially if and go back to Emma, to your point, where it's like, I don't have, like, if you are sitting down to play the game once, you don't have that time to just teach everyone everything right off the bat. So you really have to get back together to play the game to really get into the like more, I'm going to say interesting, the expansions that add more to the game, that you can't just say, that don't blend as seamlessly. Maybe that's the way to say it. Don't blend as seamlessly into the base game.
There were some games that my friend group in high school sort of got into in that way when we had like game nights where we just sort of played them enough times that we started enjoying them more, but they were mostly like the base games and we just were too chaotic to ever even add on the expansions. And even if we did, we would just know it would take 2 hours to even start anyway. So we're just like, let's just learn the base game and go from there.
In chat, Chunk mentioned Red Dragon Inn, which is one of my favorites as well. And yeah, all the expansions are just like new characters. So more of the original characters are like pretty basic and they all play like basically the same way. And the newer characters get a bit more complex with different things that they can do and different elements, but the basic gameplay itself doesn't change at all. So it's fun to have that option to like, you can introduce it to someone very easily, but still play with the expansions.
Yeah. I've only played the base game of Red Dragon, actually with Chunk. But I've only played that one. But another one that came to mind that's I think is along the same lines is Villainous. Like where the Villainous, like every villain just has their own thing. They're self-contained. And so it's very easy to be like, oh, you're a new person? Well, here's your favorite villain. Like it kind of plays off that same idea where it's just like, you don't have to learn the whole game. You're just learning your one character. I have some other expansion questions, but I think we'll add them to the growing list of post-show chat for this week, or expansion questions for us. But so with that, let's get into our announcements. If you head over to our YouTube right now, you can check out my review of Chronicles of Faith David the Shepherd, which went live this morning as of recording. And so I take a look through, I guess, like the 3 main categories for it, which I say are the plot, the art, and then the cons. And then I give my my thoughts on all of that and kind of bring it together at the end. And so you can go and check that out over there. And then next week we have a guest. Janine, why don't you tell us about him?
Woohoo! Yeah, Anna Reel is going to be joining us. She is super cool, super geeky. She runs a personality and goals coaching website. And yeah, she's really nice and I'm really excited to have her on.
Looking forward to it. We'll talk a little bit more about what our top 3 will be with Anna in a little bit.
As long as she doesn't ask me what my goals are.
I don't know. It just becomes setting goals for Chris. That's the whole podcast. Is
goals intervention.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Oh man. But before we
prepare to be here for like 4 hours.
I'll just agree. Maybe we should get this out. Yeah, that works.
Either
Sure,
the
sure.
best or worst podcast we've had. And like 4 hours of working through goals with Chris.
I'll end up crying.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with crying.
No, not at all.
I don't want to cry on the podcast though. I cry all the time elsewhere.
But with that, let's jump into our top 3 list of the week. This week, we are continuing our long running series on the fruit of the Spirit. We've done a good chunk of them, and I believe we're in. I think we're in the last half. I say that like I started counting, and then I'm like, I think that's correct. And so we are doing our top 3 illustrations of goodness. And so let's go on. And Emma, why don't you start us off?
Alrighty. My first is Rost from Horizon Zero Dawn, who essentially adopts and raises Aloy at the beginning of the game and teaches her to fight for what is right and good rather than fighting for the sake of power. And I think that's a wonderful depiction of just goodness, of going for what is right and what is just like good. Essentially, Aloy was, what's the word? Kicked out as a baby because she didn't have a mom. And Ross just adopts her and is like, that's not right. Go prove to them that you didn't do anything wrong. So, yeah.
Shanine, what's your number 1? Also, plot twist, I have a Horizon Zero Dawn on mine later.
Okay. I'm gonna say my first one is our dear Samwise Gamgee. I had to say it first. I knew someone else was gonna have it.
You don't
There's a
take
reason
my
I didn't
Lord
put
of the
it down.
Rings references. Those are mine.
There's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo, and it's worth fighting for. Sam is just good.
Well, even Tolkien he says that Sam is the true hero of that story of the story.
Mhm.
While it focuses on Frodo's journey, it's only possible due to Sam's nature and goodness.
Mm-hmm.
So good.
So good.
So good.
Chris, what do you got?
So we'll pull one from my other list. We'll throw out Aerith or Eris from Final Fantasy VII. Without, since some people are only familiar with the remake, in general, with kind of, she's just seeking to better the world, or in making do with her position. And as some of you will learn more as the story progresses, she's just a wonderful character, really well written. Kind of has this innocence aspect, but really makes everyone else around her better too as a result, which we really see in kind of the with, at least in the first part of the Final Fantasy VII remake, we really see that with Cloud, and really kind of brings out and kind of points Cloud in the right direction. Otherwise, he would just continue being that lone wolf for hire.
So for me, I was trying to think of a good superhero to put on this list, kind of embodying that, like, the good of the many kind of thing. And the first one, or maybe the best one that came to mind, is the idea of Captain America. Like, especially with how we've gotten that character in the MCU, but like that idea of the keep getting up, keep fighting for the little guy, like that kind of thing. And even though it's funny thinking like Civil War because we're about to get the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but
Yeah.
like where like I very much disagree with a lot of Captain America's decision making around Civil War and some of the events there. I think that he's always had that idea of trying to do what was best for everyone, even if it meant that like he was the one that had to become the bad guy. He was the one that had to stand up, and I think that that's such a cool part of that character and like that growth that we've gotten versus like you see Iron Man in Civil War, which is very much the like, oh, I caused a problem, I need to fix it so I don't feel guilty.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like seeing that other end of it with Captain America. So
Yeah, Cap is on my list too.
too late.
Yeah.
Emma, what's your second one?
My second one, I'm going to go with a game that's been way overdone in terms of hype. And that is Toriel from Undertale, because she's essentially the game's version of Samwise and is just all good intentions and just wants the best for all the characters, knowing what's to come. But she can't really say anything. And she just wants to raise a child. So it's my number 2.
I need to play Undertale. Like I feel like I would really like it. I just have never played it.
It's a good indie.
Yeah.
Shanine, what's your number 2?
Number 2 is Deku from My Hero Academia. I'm so sorry.
Get wrecked, Chris.
I don't have enough on my sub list.
I'll send you the rest of mine.
Yeah.
Come on. We're changing up the order from now on.
That's fair. No, but I don't know. He's just so great. He wants to be a hero, not for like the popularity and the awesomeness, but just so he can do good for the world.
Which is exactly what All Might sees in him.
Yep.
Yes.
Which is so wonderful. Yeah, I love Deku.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did not think of Deku, but that
It's
is
like
an amazing choice.
It was the first character that came to my head for this question. My next one would be Iroh, though, then, which Iroh just fits in so many of these categories. But in general, more so late. Like obviously, you could always make the argument that Iroh is ultimately a war criminal, and things of the sort. But like, I think he makes do with his position, with everything. But like after, like as his story is kind of unfolds, and even through Korra, we see him in this great place where yes, he can do things for great honor, but quickly realizing the ramifications of certain things. Like he spares the last dragons, and then seeks to restore the world to balance by guiding his nephew, and putting him in a position to better himself and ultimately aid the Avatar, and even like obviously secretly being part of the White Lotus crew, and ultimately is a big part of why the good part of the world was able to succeed, even if he had to sacrifice his own personal growth, I guess power to do so, and allowing his younger brother to take the seat of power and things. And so I love Iroh. He's the best.
Mm-hmm. for me. My number 2 are the Phantom Thieves from Persona 5. I love this cast of characters, and I especially love that the themes of Persona 5 with the idea of like freedom versus like accepting the prison that we have around us, and kind of getting to see how even like right off the bat, the very first big villain that we see is the idea of like this is somebody that's causing harm to the people around them and need to be stopped. And I really like how that as the Phantom Thieves story grows, it kind of starts looking at the ideas of tackling bigger and bigger bads that are causing bigger problems to the world. And kind of how all those things can be fixed by people who like persevere and have special powers that helps too. But like but as people who stand up for what is right and are willing to do what it takes for good. And so I really love that about them. Also, everybody should go play Persona 5. It's only 100 hours of your life.
Only.
Emma? Yeah, only. Emma,
And then you have
what's
to
your
play
number 3?
Persona 5 Royal. I'm just kidding.
All right, I have it open on a tab. So I'll look at it later. My number 3, speaking of heroes, Spider-Man is number 3. I think he fits in this in just his entire personality. But especially because one of the things he's known for is like a no-kill rule. Like he'll just wrap his enemies up in webs. And like that's something that comes out especially when he's interacting with Deadpool. And from what I read somewhere, like Deadpool went masquerading as Spider-Man one time and went, okay, I'm Spider-Man. I have to be very intentional not to kill anyone because that's what Spider-Man does. So it's like a big part of his character to like do what's right and go for the evil in the world, but he also sees that the evil is a person with struggles. Mm-hmm. And yeah.
Yeah, Spider-Man's an awesome one. And I mean like the like Spider-Man trope of anyone could be under the mask, because it's not like Spider-Man isn't specifically the powers, it's standing up for what's right, standing up for I mean like with great power comes great responsibility, but it's such a good character defining trait, I guess, for lack of a better way to say that. Shanine, what do you got?
Okay. My last one shouldn't be on Chris's list. I'm scared.
I'd be so hyped if it was. Like, we're gonna just pause and build up even more anticipation here. Whatever this is, I would love it if it's on Chris's list. And you just like 3 for 3 sniped Chris.
Part of me hopes it is, but I don't think it will be. Okay, my last one, I'm gonna go with Aslan.
Yeah, you're fine.
Obviously, as kind of a representation of Jesus, is a bit of an obvious choice, but I'm taking it anyway because he's not safe, but he is good. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think I just love that line and kind of how Aslan embodies all of those parts, that like there are parts that are maybe dangerous and that we don't associate with goodness, but it is good.
It's too on the nose for me. It's definitely not on my list. But you want
Yeah,
my pick for
figured.
Clank? Really? No. I figured it'd be on someone's list for today. Anyway. My third and final one is also an anime character, Toru Honda from Fruits Basket. She is the main character. And her character, just in general, kind of often doesn't want to inconvenience anyone, at least really early on. So she often does things that like put her at odds, like with her own health or with things. But ultimately, as the series progresses, she realizes that she can be a much better benefit when she realizes her impact on people, and be an impact and allow others to be awesome around her. Granted, it is ultimately kind of a rom-com style anime, but her character just develops so greatly, and she's just in general a good character, that as she does stops like putting herself second, she's able to impact more goodness around her. And I think it's a wonderful lesson also. Wonderful anime.
My last one, and I'm going to have to be very careful to talk about it. This is my Horizon Zero Dawn one, which like we're well past the territory of spoilers, but like with the sequel being like relatively on the horizon,
Right.
like we're now
close
getting like
by.
back in, like if this would have been like before
Was that
the
a
sequel
pun, Cameron?
nope, it was most definitely not. 'Cause I've made my stance on puns well known.
I know.
But like if this would have been like 6 months ago, I would have no trouble discussing this. But like with us knowing that there is going to be a sequel soonish, hopefully this year, crossing fingers, like that would be the dream. But my last one is Elizabeth Sobek, and by extension, Zero or Project Zero Dawn, that the game gets its title after. And again, I don't want to say too much because like it's like a major plot point of the game. But there's very much that idea of doing what is best for others, of self-sacrifice, of those types of ideals that are a huge part of Elizabeth, and very much a part of that, of her legacy within the world. And I think that's such a cool part. And there's like the foresight, the planning. I like that we have in Horizon Zero Dawn. She is a super intelligent woman, like engineer, like the very first part of the wiki on her is an American scientist, roboticist, and engineer. It's like brilliant and talented. Like yeah, it's like Elizabeth is a great character, and so again, there's not too much I can say there, but if you played Horizon Zero Dawn, you know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
And so, but listeners, if you have an illustration of goodness, feel free to drop it either in chat. We'll get to one in 1 second, or over in the comments on YouTube. Or of course, you can also tweet at us through our social medias. But I wanted to call out one that we got in chat from Varoth. It says, for me, and for superheroes, I like the X-Men. They fight for a world that tends to hate and fear them. And yeah, I think that is awesome. It's such a good example of like being there and doing what is right, even when it's not convenient for you. Like these are people that in some ways would be better off hiding, but here they are being superheroes. And being the best team ever. But, so that brings us to the end of our top 3. Next week, with Anna coming on, she wanted to do something DC related because of the release of the Snyder Cut. And so we are going to combine that with the top 3 submission request that we have from Mountain Nerds podcast, which is to do top 3 supervillains. And so we are going to do our top 3 DC supervillains. And so before the show, we were discussing Emma knows 2 supervillains, which means none of us can take those. Because those are the only 2 she
Don't
knows.
you dare. My third's going to be completely made up.
So, but yeah, so you can do that. You can also, and there of course are always no rules with top 3, but you can also even get into the specific castings. We kind of talked about this during the stream yesterday, but you can get into like the specific castings of a role, things like that, if you don't want to just do a specific character also. And so with that, it has been a great week. As always, listeners, you can find us on our social media as OneGeek411, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and join our Discord server if you want to chat between shows. You can also shoot us an email at 1stgeek411@gmail.com, and then check out the Redbubble store if you would like to buy some merch. And then you can also watch live, 6:45 Mountain Time, right here on Twitch. And then you can find the videos over on our YouTube. And then you can rate and subscribe wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. And then you can check out our show notes on our website, onegeek411.com. And lastly, if you want to follow us and connect with us individually, you can do that through our personal social media. Mine's Humar Whittle.
Mine is I am not prepared with an I.
I'm the Hoot and Howl on Twitter and Hoot and Howl Tales, TALES on Instagram.
And I'm not so foreign.
And it's been a great week.
Wash your hands.
Is Candyman a real DC villain?
Read a book.
I love you.